In the expansive dining room of the Bennett estate, adorned with the family's exquisite antiques, an unusual and tension-filled silence reigned supreme, taut as a tightened string. The pristine white tablecloth, still carrying the faint aroma of lavender, lay as a stark backdrop to a row of empty plates. Candlelight flickered, overshadowed by the encroaching darkness in the corners of the room, leaving only the metallic clang of cutlery against the old wooden table to echo a reminder of the seat that should have been occupied by Amelia. The position at the head of the table, once reserved for Jonathan Bennett, the patriarch, whose voice merged warmth with authority, had become achingly out of place, a void that mirrored the room's emptiness, unlike the festive gatherings that used to overflow with conversation and laughter. Instead of the expected clatter of dishes being served, crystal-clear glassware and fine china were conspicuously bare, devoid of leftover breadcrumbs or the comforting heat of a roast turkey. In the center stood a bouquet of white chrysanthemums and golden autumn leaves, once a symbol of celebration, now turned a bitter, ironic centerpiece, reminding everyone of the unfulfilled feast and Amelia's conspicuous absence. Members of the Bennett family slumped slightly in their chairs, eyes drifting over the barren tabletop, some gazing downward, others fixated on the grand chandelier above as though searching for a sign, any sign that might break the oppressive stillness. Meanwhile, 300 meters away in Asheville, within the cozy confines of a loft boasting silver-gray wooden floors and creamy drapes, Amelia leaned against her marble kitchen island. The warm glow of the under-cabinet lights washed over a porcelain mug steaming with spiced apple cider. She took a contemplative sip, savoring its sweet aroma of cinnamon, while her phone lay silent on the countertop. Looking out through the expansive windows, she could see the flicker of candlelight mirrored back from the Bennett estate, the moment when she ought to have been seated beside her family, sharing laughter and embracing the togetherness of Thanksgiving. Amelia's emotions blended a serene calmness with a quiet sorrow. She felt at peace knowing she had fulfilled her duties as a daughter. She had transferred the full payment to Maple and Pine for the turkey, personally confirmed the order with Sweet Laurel Bakery for the pumpkin cheesecake her mother adored. She had poured her heart into selecting each dish spread, pâté the cranberry sauce glowing like rubies, but all of it now sat undone. The silence at the grand dining table spoke volumes. It was a wordless rejection, a refusal of emotional ties that demanded no lengthy explanation. Back in the silent dining room, Jonathan Bennett's missed call appeared on Amelia's screen. She resisted answering, not out of spite, but because she waited for the moment they would feel the weight of her absence. Her hands tightened into fists as she whispered a silent apology to herself for years spent as the family's invisible caretaker, the tireless organizer, the one everyone counted on but never truly acknowledged. The ambient hum of her loft offered no background music, only the soft rustle of curtains drifting in the October breeze. In the Bennett dining room, Uncle Mark's eyes flicked to the antique clock on the wall, measuring each second in the absence of clinking dishes. Mrs. Bennett, Amelia's mother, stood near the French doors, arms crossed, lips pressed hard, tears threatening the corners of her eyes as she struggled for composure. Aunt Louise leaned forward slightly, attempting to catch someone's gaze, then reclined again, realizing no words could fill the void. The oppressive atmosphere draped over every heart in the room. No one dared speak, knowing that any utterance would only underscore the family's betrayal of kinship on what should have been the most sacred holiday of the year. A lone candle flame sputtered out as a breeze slipped through the cracked window, a moment that seemed like a final chord, heralding the collapse of the perfect family image. Darkness enveloped the room, leaving only faint reflections dancing across the antique mirrors, a silent reminder that nothing can mask the cost of exclusion and silence. Amelia's missing place at the feast was more than an empty chair inlaid with ivory. It represented the absence of shared memories, the laughter and conversations that once bound them together, and the warmth of familial love that should have graced their most cherished celebration. The moment Jonathan Bennett's phone lit up with a missed call notification, the heavy silence at the dining table shattered. His normally warm, authoritative voice crackled through the speaker. The food didn't arrive. The faint creak of his swivel chair and the hurried footsteps behind him heralded the chaos about to unfold. Amelia's mother, Victoria Bennett, her face still drained from the mounting tension, leapt up from her chair, hands trembling as she grabbed a backup phone. She began calling the caterer who was supposed to oversee each dish's arrival, but all that met her ears was prolonged silence and no concrete explanation. To the right of the table, Uncle Mark, usually taciturn, but the family's unofficial secretary, knitted his brows, gripping the armrest of his mahogany chair in an attempt to steady himself. He quietly rose and walked to the corner of the room, opening the refrigerator in hopes of finding a makeshift meal. Instead, he discovered only bottled water and a few unsuitable canned goods for an extravagant Thanksgiving feast. His bewildered gaze swept across the gathered family members. Aunt Louise covered her face with her hands, stifling a sigh. Amelia's younger brother Samuel muttered, "Is this some kind of mistake?" The loudest sounds at that moment were the worried whispers of the aunts, those most concerned with appearances. They leaned in, close voices hushed. "What's happening here? Did someone forget to confirm the order Maple and Pine can't cancel at the last minute?" Each sought an explanation that would mask their collective embarrassment. At the head of the table, Uncle Ron, typically the joker who kept gatherings lively, was utterly at a loss. He glanced at Victoria, then at the empty plate before him, stammering, "Amelia, what is going on?" Heads turned, eyes focusing on the vacant seat that should have been occupied by the eldest daughter. A collective question hung in the air. Where is she? A hesitant voice called her name like a plea. In that moment, the Thanksgiving setting transformed into the stage of confusion. Doubtful glances and forced smiles quickly gave way to deeper silence, as though everyone was holding back the ire swelling in their hearts. Victoria attempted to regain composure. Let's wait a moment. It must be a delivery mix-up." She tapped her foot nervously on the floor, striving to appear calm, but Aunt Louise's heavy sigh and Uncle Ron's bitter smirk gave away the truth. By then it was clear this was more than a canceled feast. It was a wordless declaration Amelia was not wanted here. Over 90 minutes of silence ensued. Plates lay untouched, phones lay forgotten. Tension pooled like condensation on the antique mahogany table, leaving a bitter aftertaste of silent betrayal. Finally, Uncle Mark spoke, his low voice quivering. "We should reconfirm with the vendor." Victoria nodded, eyes misty, clasping her hands as if in prayer. "Please, someone call Maple and Pine right now." A phone was dialed, but instead of an immediate resolution, all that came through was a lone dial tone, proof that they were on hold. A few moments later, when the call ended in silence, the group stopped debating and settled into stifled sighs and tired expressions. Instead of marking a warm beginning, the dinner had become evidence that even the coziest table can turn into a setting of emptiness when respect for a loved one vanishes. Words of consolation were whispered. It must be some oversight. Let's see what comes of it. Yet each person sensed the deeper rift beneath the polite veneer. What they anticipated as a celebratory meal had been postponed, and in doing so revealed a painful truth. When a family member is no longer honored, even the grandest Thanksgiving can become a scene of hollow chairs and disappointment. The reason Amelia was banished from the Bennett family's Thanksgiving table did not stem from a random mishap, but from a long buildup of unspoken grievances and biases. A week before the holiday, Amelia saw Aunt Carla's enthusiastic post in the family group chat. "I can't wait for our family reunion." She replied cheerfully, "I'm looking forward to seeing everyone too." Yet just hours later, a private message from her cousin Lucas brought her crashing back to reality. "Everyone told me you're not invited this year. Mom and Dad said they only want an immediate family gathering." Those words hit Amelia like an icy dagger. She immediately called her mother Victoria, but only received evasive responses. Victoria said, "We're keeping it small. Only siblings, do you understand?" Choking back emotion? Amelia protested, "Mom, I'm your daughter." Victoria's tone wavered. "We thought it'd be less stressful that way," but until that moment, no tension had ever been formally acknowledged. The crux of the conflict lay in Amelia's refusal to shoulder her family's endless expenses unconditionally. The month before, when her brother Michael's car broke down, her mother showed her a $2,000 repair bill and gently urged, "Please help out so he doesn't lose face." Amelia refused, insisting that the family members were all adults capable of managing their own finances. In Victoria's eyes, that refusal was an act of unacceptable stubbornness. Around the same time, Amelia declined to clean up after her sister Rachel's over-the-top wedding. The post-ceremony debt from decorations and photography fell heavily on the table, and her mother pleaded, "Amelia, please help cover these costs." Exhausted, Amelia explained that personal responsibility shouldn't be forced upon her shoulders. Though reasonable, her stance was interpreted as ingratitude, like a cold breeze cutting through the already fragile family bonds. These incidents sowed seeds of mistrust. To the Bennetts, the eldest child who should have been their pillar became a vocal irritant. Aunt Louise, ever mindful of appearances, whispered, "She's uncooperative and even publicly refuses." Uncle Mark speculated, "Maybe she's resentful of being treated like a servant." Gradually, those murmurs solidified into silent agreement. Amelia would not be invited to the feast. Another key factor was the family's obsession with maintaining social prestige. Aunt Carla curated parties to flaunt their status, partnering only with select vendors like Maple and Pine and Sweet Laurel Bakery. Although Amelia paid her share, she refused to participate in the traditional ceremonial naming of the dishes pâté fanned cranberry sauce and gorgeously roasted turkey under the glittering chandeliers. That alone was her crime. She refused to validate their grandiose symbols. When Victoria suggested Amelia contribute financially and quietly watch from the sidelines, Amelia gave a sad smile and said, "I don't want honorary seating." That comment erased any pretense of including her. From that moment, her voice ceased to matter, and the empty chair at the head of the table carried a clear verdict, not absence, but deliberate removal. The price for rejecting that invisible authority was more than losing a seat. It was a silent declaration this family valued obedience over genuine affection. Amelia's exclusion conveyed an unspoken message: anyone who defied the Bennett family's unwritten rules would be expelled. It was a mechanism to erase dissent, even when dissent stemmed from the desire for equality and respect. In the silence of her empty chair, Amelia realized this truth: her removal from the table was not mere discourtesy, but a statement of her refusal to play their power games. Her banishment was not random, but the inevitable outcome of a relationship built on control and unconditional sacrifice. Yet within that silence, she found the strength to let go of the past and chart her own course for the future. Once Amelia realized she had been excluded from the Thanksgiving feast, she did not retreat into silent resentment. Instead, she executed a brilliantly strategic retaliation that would both punish her family and preserve her own dignity. First, Amelia gathered every piece of evidence proving she had paid the full tab bank statements, the maple and pine receipt for the turkey, the Sweet Laurel Bakery invoice for the pumpkin pies, even screenshots of confirmation emails. She stored them on her phone and computer, ready to deploy if necessary. Next, she contacted Maple and Pine customer service. "Hello, my name is Amelia Carter. I placed and fully paid for my family's Thanksgiving order on November 23rd, but they have refused to accept delivery. I would like to cancel the order and request an immediate refund." Her tone was calm yet firm. Within minutes, the representative confirmed the refund had been approved and informed the delivery team not to dispatch any food. Not stopping there, Amelia reached out to Sweet Laurel Bakery. She called the store manager and stated, "I've ordered 15 pumpkin pies for Thanksgiving, but the party host my family refused them. Please refund my $225. Initially hesitant, the manager relented once Amelia sent the proof of purchase along with the order number. The refund was processed within 24 hours. Meanwhile, at the Bennett estate, Jonathan and Victoria Bennett were baffled why the grand white draped table was still empty. When Maple and Pine attempted to deliver and called the family's number to say the order was canceled, the parents replied in stunned voices, "Who canceled it?" Mrs. Bennett whispered nervously, "It must be a mistake." Their confusion quickly turned into panic when an email from Sweet Laurel Bakery confirmed the order cancellation and refund complete with the line, $225 refunded to Amelia Carter. The waiting period at the dining table became more excruciating than any awkward family gathering could be. Guests, relatives, friends, and neighbors peered at their empty plates and then at Jonathan and Victoria, probing for explanations. All responses met with growing suspicion. Aunt Louise's impatience peaked as she exclaimed, "Who cancels a prepaid feast?" That very question served as a wake-up call. This was no mishap, but a deliberate strike. Back in her Asheville loft, Amelia sipped her warm spiced cider while tuning into her family's group video call, accidentally leaving the meeting room unmuted. She heard their hushed whispers. "We've been played. Someone's pulling a mean prank." In those moments, she felt both vindicated and relieved, vindicated by her plan's success, and relieved to unburden years of silent frustration. Amelia's actions went beyond reclaiming her money. They issued a potent lesson to the Bennett clan about the value of kinship. She demonstrated that when she sets clear boundaries concerning respect and entitlement, she will fiercely defend them. Family members later wondered aloud, how should we have treated her? Yet by then it was too late for second chances. Word of the canceled feast quickly spread through the family grapevine. Some relatives rallied in support of Amelia. Her sister Rachel phoned to apologize and admit her regrets. Others quietly expressed regret to Amelia, confessing they did not agree with her initial banishment. Even Aunt Carla had to offer public apologies to some cousins. "I must have misunderstood Mother's wishes." Amelia observed each reaction with unwavering composure, from private apology calls to hesitant messages to the cautious glances she received when walking into their subsequent Christmas gathering. Consequently, her smart retaliation yielded two enduring victories: justice and self-respect. First, she reclaimed fairness not through aggression, but through rightful claims documentation and steadfast resolve. Second, she protected her dignity, refusing to allow anyone to belittle or exploit her goodwill. In the still emptiness of that long table, Amelia's act of retaliation resonated more powerfully than any accusatory speech. It transmitted an unmistakable message that family ties cannot be weaponized, and that respect must be upheld through decisive, principled action. When the kitchen doors of the Bennett estate swung open for the third time with no food in hand, the long-awaited Thanksgiving feast transformed into a stage of raw drama and tension. In the first moments, Rachel, the younger sister, eager to impress her new boyfriend, burst into tears and bolted for the adjacent sitting room, leaving her glittering cocktail dress draped across the sofa like discarded confetti. Her sobs reverberated like cannon fire, leaving Uncle Ron, the family's resident jester, at a loss for words other than pounding his fist on the mahogany table. In another corner, Aunt Louise bowed her head, hands clutching a napkin to her face as though praying for this chaos to end. Meanwhile, Samuel, Amelia's younger brother, paced wildly around the room, whispering to himself, "How could it have come to this?" He lifted his phone to dial for help, but only heard long disconnected beeps, signaling that the outside world was as perplexed as they were. Amid the mounting unease, David Bennett, Amelia's father, sat stoically, shoulders trembling, as the chandelier's glow revealed the turmoil in his eyes. He spoke not a word, yet his furrowed brow carried the weight of the crisis. Victoria Bennett, Amelia's mother, leapt from her head-of-table seat, hands shaking as she pointed at her silent cell phone and shouted, "There must be a mistake." Her voice, though loud, was quickly drowned out by the murmurs of disbelief spreading through the room. "No one served our meal. What on earth happened? Did someone cancel the order?" Attempting to contain her rage and embarrassment, Victoria hissed to Uncle Mark call the caterer immediately. He scrambled for his phone thumb, furiously tapping the screen before whispering, "They say the order was canceled at the request of Amelia Carter." The words hit like a thunderclap, draining color from every face. Aunt Louise, Samuel, and even the usually boisterous Uncle Ron froze in stunned silence. Ron buried his head in his arms atop the table, muttering, "She actually did that." Just then the doorbell rang. Victoria stumbled across the room, hope flickering in her eyes, only to be met by a local delivery driver's apology. "I'm sorry, ma'am, the order has been canceled. I have nothing to deliver." Victoria collapsed backward into a nearby chair, grasping the table edge to steady herself. Half an hour passed, and the Bennett gathering felt more like an audience caught in a tragicomedy than a celebratory feast. Rachel remained in the sitting room, her tears a testament to her humiliation. Samuel stood behind his chair, hands clasped behind his head, riddled with uncertainty. Aunt Louise kept her face buried in her napkin, tears still dampening the fabric. Only David remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the empty seat at the table, an unspoken reminder that Amelia's place was meant to be among them. Here and there, unoccupied chairs served as silent reproaches, each angle of the table steeped in tension. Whispers cut through the air. "Amelia proved she doesn't need this family. She's made her point." The atmosphere grew taut, as a drawn bow awaiting a single spark to ignite. Finally, Victoria's voice cracked. "Why, Amelia?" Her question rang out in the hushed dining room, and for a moment, everyone fell silent. Rachel emerged from the sitting room, her eyes puffy, and offered softly, "She wanted to show us her value." Samuel chimed in, voice unsteady but clear, "I've taken Amelia's efforts for granted." Around the table, faces paled at the admission from those closest to the center of the conflict. In that instant, the family realized this was not merely a missing meal. They were locked in a conflict of pride, control, and respect. They had surrendered their feast and faced the humiliating truth. By underestimating one member, they had lost more than a dinner. They had lost their dignity. And as the candles guttered and a chill wind swept through the tall windows, silence descended once more upon the Bennett estate. The empty dining room stood as a stark monument to a bitter lesson: when love is manipulated and respect denied, even the warmest gathering can become a battleground with no victors. After hours of tension and chaos at the Thanksgiving table, once the emotional storm had subsided, the Bennett family launched a script rewrite strategy, an effort to reconstruct the entire incident from their own self-serving perspective. Just 3 days after Thanksgiving, Victoria Bennett sent a generic message to the family group chat. "We really missed Amelia. Hope we can move past this." The brief note contained not a single sincere apology, serving instead as a decorative rug meant to conceal the mess underneath. Shortly thereafter, a private message from Aunt Carla appeared on Amelia's phone. "We've talked it over with Mom and Dad. They're really remorseful." Yet the hollow tone betrayed casual civility rather than genuine contrition. Next, Aunt Louise emailed several relatives Amelia is going through a difficult time and seems unstable. Each word pierced like an arrow, casting the victim as the mentally unstable party, while the true offenders evaded accountability. David Bennett even placed phone calls to out-of-town uncles declaring, "We need to look after Amelia's mental well-being." In those calls, he used polite but subtly guiding language. "She's overly sensitive. We mustn't let this escalate." Such comments spread through the clan, sending an unspoken warning: anyone who stood up for Amelia risked being labeled an enabler of unstable behavior. Behind closed group messages, some cousins shared images of the empty table flanked by a lone white chrysanthemum, accompanied by captions like "Family tensions ran high" after Amelia canceled the order. "Let's hope it all blows over soon." Their emojis feigned sympathy, yet hinted that far from being the one harmed, the Bennett family were the real victims of a cruel joke. Uncle Mark, acting as the family's event secretary, announced an impromptu gathering for the following day. "We'll also have a mental health professional on hand, just in case." This proclamation served as a dramatic salvage operation, casting the Bennetts as wounded parties in need of care, all while cementing Amelia's new title of unstable. Amelia quietly observed each maneuver. She didn't protest. Instead, she cataloged every mention of her being unstable. It became clear that her family was desperate to preserve their image of the perfect Bennett household in the eyes of friends, neighbors, and extended relatives. Their rewriting wasn't limited to words. They circulated a revised account: "Amelia went too far by canceling our family's celebration." One brief post even included a screenshot of incessant calls to Maple and Pine with the comment, "Signs she's out of control." All evidence was carefully selected to present a single narrative: Amelia as the saboteur, her family as the wronged innocents. When they met for the hastily arranged follow-up, the Bennett estate's dining room glowed warmly with soft lighting, yet the atmosphere reeked of psychological crisis. Uncle Ron sighed. "Such an awkward situation." Aunt Carla nodded. She acted purely on emotion. Aunt Louise muttered, "We must protect the family's reputation." Each glance directed at Amelia reminded her she was no longer the respected eldest daughter, but the one who needs help. In reality, the Bennett family's script rewrite did more than defend their dignity. It shrouded their culpability. They refused to apologize for excluding Amelia or admit their wrongdoing. Instead, they boxed her into isolation, demanding that she explain herself and apologize if she wished to be welcomed back. Amelia saw through their theater. Confident in her facts and evidence, she opted out of every so-called crisis resolution meeting. She chose to carve out a space for herself among the relatives who truly cared, those who resisted her family's role reversal tactics. The Bennetts' decision to rewrite the narrative exemplified their willingness to distort reality to uphold appearances. But to Amelia, it was also an inadvertent confession. They feared the truth and dreaded being exposed. And that fear would haunt them far longer than any whispered rumors of her unstable behavior. That Christmas, Amelia decided to attend the Bennett family dinner, but not as a silent guest. She entered with meticulous preparation and unwavering resolve. At precisely 7:00 p.m., her car rolled up to the ornate iron gates of the estate. Warm golden lights strung across the porch welcomed her, yet the air retained an unshakable chill. She stepped out in a deep red coat and heels, exuding the poise of a warrior prepared for a winter campaign. Crossing the plush sheepskin rug at the entrance, Amelia paused to take a breath, then offered a composed smile. The doorbell rang, and as the threshold opened, Victoria Bennett's eyes widened in surprise. Their gazes met in a fleeting eternity. Victoria offered a perfunctory greeting. You're here." Amelia responded with a clear, composed Merry Christmas and entered the living room where relatives gathered around the crackling fireplace. The dining table was dressed in luxurious red linens with softly scented vanilla candles flickering. But the head chair reserved for Amelia had become something more than a seat. It was her fortress, a sturdy velvet-upholstered throne that would let her stand firm if necessary. All eyes turned toward her, some curious, some apprehensive, but Amelia's serene smile betrayed no sign of doubt. Silence stretched briefly before Uncle Ron, acting as the evening's master of ceremonies, spoke Amelia. "You made it on time." His voice was warm but laced with anxiety. Amelia set her purse beside her chair and nodded gently. "Yes, and I'm glad to be here." Each word she chose struck a balance between courtesy and quiet confidence. As dinner commenced, the appetizer creamy pumpkin bisque was offered first. Guests watched as Amelia sipped it, closed her eyes in appreciation, then praised, "This soup is exquisite, Aunt Carla. You've chosen well." Carla's cheeks flushed with pleasure, though a trace of embarrassment lingered behind her forced smile. When the main course arrived, crispy roast turkey, tangy cranberry sauce, and silky mashed potatoes, Amelia's father David hesitantly asked, "Do you find everything to your liking?" She replied, "Absolutely, Father. It's wonderful." Then with deliberate calm, she tapped her fork on the plate, producing a clear, resonant clang. A subtle reminder that this was not a coddling affair, but a gathering where dignity was at stake. Midway through the meal, Victoria attempted to break the tension. Let's enjoy this moment together." Amelia looked directly at her mother and in a measured tone said, "Mother, I'd like to hear an apology." The table fell silent. Victoria faltered, "I'm sorry that we let you feel excluded." Her quiet words were small as dew, but carried profound weight. Amelia continued, "I hope our family understands that respect is not just spoken, but acted upon." In that instant, the atmosphere shifted. Uncle Mark whispered to Aunt Louise with a knowing nod, acknowledging that truth was reclaiming its place. Samuel's eyes brightened with tears. "You were right, Amelia." Rachel stepped forward to grasp Amelia's hand. "I'm sorry I didn't understand." Those simple, heartfelt apologies thawed the icy divide. Unexpectedly, Grandma emerged from the living room and approached the table. "Amelia, you are the pride of your mother and of all of us." Her voice rang like a church bell, pure and commanding. The family collectively nodded, genuine smiles blooming on each face. The walls that had divided them crumbled. When dessert pumpkin pie and hot chocolate was served, it symbolized their renewed bond. Amelia offered a slice to her mother. "Please try this." Victoria accepted it and smiled gratefully. The empty chairs of the past had vanished, replaced by warmth and hopeful promise. The dinner concluded with laughter, hugs, and promises of fresh beginnings. Amelia rose and addressed the family. "I love you all and believe we can overcome any challenge together." Her words resonated like a guiding light in the winter night. Her act of struggle was not a harsh confrontation, but a patient reclamation of fairness through dialogue and compassion. That Christmas night, the Bennett estate shimmered not only with festive lights, but with the glow of forgiveness and understanding. Amelia's courageous stand had transformed what could have been a night of division into a genuine reunion, affirming the power of respect and family love. After what appeared to be a reconciliatory Christmas dinner, the Bennett family once again deployed their narrative reversal strategy right at the dining table. For a brief moment, they feigned harmony, but as soon as everyone had set down their utensils, Victoria Bennett broke the silence with a calculated smile and a subtle nod to Uncle Mark. The chandelier's warm glow masked their true intentions. Clearing her throat, Victoria said, "We've spoken to some of our relatives and they're concerned because they heard Amelia has been somewhat unstable." All eyes pivoted toward Amelia, awaiting her reaction. Aunt Carla chimed in with feigned sympathy. "Yes, and some were worried that you might be under too much pressure." They weren't certain of the details, but they heard you canceled the family feast, which understandably alarmed them. These vague assertions planted a fresh seed of doubt. It wasn't the Bennetts who had shunned Amelia, but rather Amelia who had disrupted tradition, forcing them to act to preserve peace. Uncle Mark explained, "When we learned you wouldn't be attending the dinner, we assumed perhaps you didn't wish to return home or were simply overwhelmed." Clearly, Amelia's absence was recast as a symptom of mental imbalance. Hearing this, Aunt Louise hesitated. "It's unfortunate. If you felt uncomfortable, you could have just told us." Victoria offered a superficially gentle nod and then added, "We'd have gladly supported you, but you shut us out." All we saw was a canceled order and complete silence. Her words felt like arrows piercing Amelia's isolation, forcing her onto the defensive, expected to explain and apologize. Samuel quickly attempted to defend his sister. "She did explain to me, but Mother cut him off. I can only speak to what I know, and that caused unnecessary upheaval." Rachel shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her sister's gaze entirely. Even Grandma forced a polite smile. "I hope through this conversation we can clear up all misunderstandings." Yet Grandma's invitation to share feelings only deepened Amelia's discomfort. "Amelia, dear, would you like to express how you feel?" Her gracious tone only tightened the knot. This was no genuine outreach, but a demand to reveal the root cause of her family's troubles. The atmosphere pivoted definitively against Amelia. Family members painted her as the agitator. Victoria recounted the moment she called Maple and Pine. "They informed me your order was canceled. We simply assumed it was a system glitch." Aunt Carla patted Aunt Louise's shoulder. "That's when we realized how serious the situation was." Uncle Mark concluded briskly, "But thankfully, everything is fine now. We can all look forward together, right?" Small perfunctory applause rippled around the table, signaling unspoken consensus that the narrative of Amelia's instability had been sufficiently convincing both to family and any outside observers. Amid those polite claps, Amelia closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and said softly, "I never intended to alarm anyone. I only sought equal treatment and respect." Silence fell again. Rachel looked up and whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't support you." But Victoria shook her head and affirmed, "I hope everyone understands now we must care for each other's feelings." When the dinner concluded, no formal apology was extended to Amelia, only lingering reminders that she had supposedly been unwell. The Bennets left the table feeling relieved they had skillfully reversed the narrative and preserved their family's reputation. Meanwhile, Amelia returned to her peaceful loft, reminding herself that no amount of spin could erase the evidence and truth she held. In the quiet of the night, she lit a single candle, its warm glow illuminating her space, and reminding her that only she could truly control the story of her own life. As the dinner appeared to be mired in stifling silence, signs of support for Amelia began to emerge in the Bennet dining room. It started with a hushed whisper from Samuel, who leaned over to Aunt Carla and said softly, "Are you sure this isn't a misunderstanding?" Carla shot a quick glance toward Amelia's empty chair before nodding reluctantly. In that instant, her expression shifted from complicity to startled awareness that they had gone too far. Next, Uncle Ron, the family jokester who had dominated the atmosphere with quips, fell completely quiet. He turned to face Amelia and said in a solemn tone, "Amelia, please forgive us. We were wrong." His words shattered the walls of prejudice, like the first cracks in ice. This was not a perfunctory apology, but a heartfelt plea from someone who had caused harm. Beside him, Aunt Louise rose from her seat, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Amelia. I didn't understand you." Grasping a napkin tightly, she seemed to reassure herself as much as Amelia. The heavy stillness began to give way to warm acknowledgement whispers, turning into clear voices that began to melt the previous tension. Moments later, Ethan, Amelia's cousin who lived out of town, suddenly appeared on the dining room's video call, a surprise orchestrated by Aunt Carla. Everyone hushed as his familiar face flashed on the screen. "Amelia," he began, "I know this has been awkward, but I don't agree with how the family acted." His bittersweet smile and determined eyes filled the room. Amelia offered him a grateful smile in return. Then Grandma, whose word carried the greatest weight in the family, stepped forward from the living room and approached the table. "Amelia, you have always been this family's heart," she said, resting her frail hand on Amelia's shoulder. Her voice resonated like a church bell, pure, commanding, and full of pride. In respect, the entire family fell silent, bowing their heads to honor her courage and compassion. The atmosphere lifted further as relatives poured more wine and gently clinked glasses. Uncle Mark's voice, thick with emotion, said, "Let's enjoy the rest of our dinner, but never forget our promise to respect Amelia." Victoria placed her hand over her heart and said softly, "I remember that promise." Aunt Carla patted the seat beside Amelia. "We're here for you." When the dessert apple pie with vanilla ice cream was served, Amelia no longer hesitated. She nodded and said, "Please enjoy this pie with me." The table looked upon her with genuine affection. Samuel beamed, and Aunt Louise quietly scooped a portion for Amelia, a small but deeply meaningful gesture. Throughout the remainder of the meal, there were no more references to the incident. Instead, laughter filled the air, old family stories resurfaced, and gentle piano melodies drifted from the adjacent room. Amelia's heart felt warm once more, assured that she was not alone. This support was not born of empty words, but from sincere actions, admission of mistakes, and the willingness to make amends. As the evening drew to a close, David Bennet stood and spoke in a low, tender voice. "My daughter, I was wrong to let you suffer. I promise to take responsibility and listen to you more." Tears welled up in his eyes, touching everyone deeply. Victoria embraced him and nodded in agreement. Gathered around the final feast of Christmas night candles flickering against festive wallpaper, Amelia stood and addressed her family. "Thank you all for standing by me. I hope we can rebuild trust and love each other with mutual respect." A gentle round of applause followed, and beneath it a shared beat of hearts that had begun to heal. In that moment, all past divisions melted away. The support that gradually revealed itself around the dining table did more than salvage a single meal. It launched a new chapter, one of genuine family bonds, unconditional love and understanding expressed through simple but profound actions. After countless storms and narrative twists, the Bennett family finally gathered with Amelia for the final confrontation at the dining table. The dining room was more elegant than usual, a pristine white tablecloth, fine porcelain settings meticulously arranged, and candlelight dancing on antique mirrors. Everyone understood that this was no ordinary meal, but the moment to face the long-hidden truth. A soft chime from Amelia's Alexa announced the end of silence. She gently inclined her head in greeting, then took the seat at the head of the table once left empty at Thanksgiving. Across from her sat Victoria Bennett, hands clasped tightly on the chair's frame, her eyes betraying both resolve and remorse. Next to Victoria, David Bennett sat with shoulders slightly stooped, watching his daughter's reaction intently. A hush fell for a few pregnant seconds before Victoria cleared her throat. "Amelia, do you know why we asked you here tonight?" Her voice rang clear, yet trembled with withheld emotion. Amelia met her mother's gaze and replied firmly, "I believe I know because I spoke up, refused to do everything unconditionally, and defended myself." The table went completely silent. Eyes flicked across each family member's face: Aunt Carla, Uncle Mark, Aunt Louise, Rachel, and Samuel, each feeling the weight of her words. Victoria lowered her gaze to the tablecloth, then gestured toward the empty seat beside Amelia. "We excluded you from Thanksgiving, removed you from the group chat, even spread rumors that you were unstable. We treated you that way, and now we want you to tell us, were we wrong?" The question trembled with both hope and fear. Amelia inhaled deeply, looked from her mother to her father, and answered, "Yes. Clearly you were wrong. Family love must never be wielded as a weapon of control or punishment." Victoria's tone softened. "We just wanted to keep the peace in the family." Aunt Louise spoke up on her mother's behalf. "Honestly, we feared you would continue to push back and heighten tensions." Samuel lifted his head, eyes brimming. "Sister, I just want you to know I'm always with you." Rachel nodded, tears welling. "I'm sorry I helped enable everything." In an instant, the oppressive tension melted away, replaced by genuine humility. David Bennett, the quiet but thoughtful father, removed his glasses and looked straight at his daughter. "My daughter, I'm sorry I failed to protect you, allowing your mother and aunts to lead us astray." His voice cracked, and the entire table grew emotional as they heard him accept responsibility for the very first time. Victoria laid her hand on his shoulder, sharing the burden and the resolve to move forward together. Amelia wiped away a stray tear, her voice gentle yet resolute. "I never wished for anyone to suffer or feel humiliated. I only wanted us to respect one another. Respect isn't empty words, but actions inviting one another, listening, acknowledging mistakes, and being ready to apologize." Beneath the warm candlelight, her words resonated like a covenant. There would be no more secrets, no more blame shifting. Moments later, Aunt Carla rose slowly, her warm voice steady. "We pledge to improve. We will open our arms to welcome you back," Uncle Mark added, "and no one will be denied the right to speak their mind." Aunt Louise whispered, "Family is where we accept each other's flaws." The entire table nodded in unison. Dessert warm apple pie with vanilla ice cream was brought forth, marking the conclusion of their dialogue. As the pie was portioned out, David smiled. "Thank you for guiding us here to this moment." Victoria lowered her head, her voice thick. "I'm grateful to you." Samuel laid his hand on his sister's shoulder. "I'm proud of you." Rachel embraced Amelia. "You're the strongest person I know." Each family member lightly tapped their dessert spoon against another's, not a toast of wine, but a spoonful affirmation of unity. In that final moment, Amelia surveyed the table and saw faces that had journeyed through doubt, anger, remorse, compassion, and understanding. She smiled softly. "I love our family, and I believe we will be stronger when we stand together." Soft laughter rippled through the room, warming it like an eternal flame. And as the candles flickered out one by one, leaving a gentle darkness, the Bennett dining room stood transformed, not as a place of old wounds, but as a symbol of sincerity, forgiveness, and the new beginning of bonds more resilient than ever. After all the apologies and admissions had been exchanged, the Bennett family dinner still lacked one crucial step, unveiling the full truth that had been hidden for so long. Amelia took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting candlelight that reignited her resolve. She set down her knife and fork and looked each family member squarely in the eye. "There is something everyone needs to hear." She began, her voice calm yet filled with authority. "For years, Mother taught me that family is everything, and anyone who refuses to comply will be cast aside. But that is not the truth. The truth is we have used love as a shield to conceal ambition and power." The table fell silent, broken only by the faint clatter of cutlery as Amelia laid her fork aside. Victoria Bennett frowned but did not interrupt. Amelia continued, "When you, Mother, and Aunt Carla showcased the Bennett name through lavish feasts, you never allowed anyone to question the family's unspoken rule: silence equals consent, obedience equals loyalty. And anyone daring to refuse was labeled unstable." A collective sigh rose from Aunt Louise and Uncle Mark as they recognized the sting of her words. Amelia lifted her chin to look at David Bennett. "Father, do you remember the times I called out the injustice when Mother forced me to pay debts I didn't agree to? You heard me, but never defended me. You chose peace over principle by remaining silent." David bowed his head, his eyes glistening with regret. She did not cast blame. She simply reminded him of a truth he had allowed to be buried. "I overheard phone calls behind my back when Mother called your psychologist and Uncle Mark dialed relatives to discuss my situation," Amelia went on. Darkness seemed to thicken around them as everyone realized their secrets were no longer safe. "You reversed the narrative, convincing outsiders that I was the troublemaker. Yet it was you who sowed discord and fear." The air grew stifling. Rachel's lips trembled. "Big sister, But Amelia smiled gently. "I don't blame you, Rachel. I just want you to know you matter and you're no pawn." Samuel gripped his sister's hand and softly wiped her tear. "You deserve justice." Eyes softened at last, recognizing each other's true roles. No one would lose this moment. Amelia exhaled and poured water for everyone. Now is the time to rebuild trust. Truth isn't simply a story told, it's the actions we take next. When we face each other without barriers or hidden scripts, that's when we heal. I want our family to be a sanctuary, not an arena for power games. The room fell silent. Each glass clinked like a bell, tolling a wake-up call. Victoria swallowed hard and wept quietly. "You are right, my child. I focused so much on our reputation that I forgot what family means." Aunt Carla dabbed her eyes and whispered hoarsely, "You've taught us a profound lesson." Uncle Mark nodded gravely. "Nothing is more precious than truth." Aunt Louise added, "A family needs honesty, not false perfection." In that moment, the invisible walls collapsed. In their stripped-down gazes, they saw the harm they had inflicted. No one was left playing a role or spinning a story. They exchanged looks of empathy and genuine acceptance. Amelia reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo album from the first dinner she had organized for them. "This is the family I want us to return to," she said, spreading images of unguarded smiles and clasped hands. Memories of true warmth moved them deeply. "We once supported one another wholeheartedly. Let's use that as our foundation moving forward." David Bennett retrieved a handwritten letter from his wedding to Victoria. "My love family is where we find peace." He handed it to Victoria, his eyes shining with hope. She touched the letter, feeling that old spark rekindle. Aunt Carla laid her hand over Amelia's. "We will never leave you alone again." The mood lightened and laughter bubbled up once more. They lingered at the table, sharing stories without hesitation. Dessert was passed around freely, no empty chairs, only seats drawn closer together, symbolizing the distance they had closed. The revealed truth was not an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter, one of enduring bonds built on respect and understanding. After all the turmoil, conflicts, and truths revealed, the final dinner at the Bennett table closed with a vital message and profoundly meaningful outcomes. That message stemmed directly from Amelia's experience. Family bonds are truly enduring only when built on respect, understanding, and fairness. She stood up not just for herself, but for every family member, urging them to recognize the importance of mutual respect. Her strategic retaliation on Thanksgiving Day was never about revenge, but about awakening consciences and forcing everyone to face the consequences of excluding a loved one. That tactic posed a critical question: does this family genuinely value love, or does it merely cling to covert power? When those involved were compelled to take responsibility, they gradually understood that a family space should never tolerate unspoken rules that cause harm. The first and most evident result was sincere apologies. These went beyond polite words to heartfelt admissions. "Mother, I'm sorry for hurting you, Father. I apologize for failing to protect you, Uncle Ron. I regret my silence." Acknowledging mistakes shattered barriers and paved the way for forgiveness. Such forgiveness does not erase the past, but eases the pain and allows everyone to look forward. Once apologies were exchanged, the next outcome was healing. Chairs were drawn closer together. The table no longer felt empty. Every laugh, every embrace, every gentle touch on a shoulder became stitches mending relationship rifts. Sometimes healing is as simple as listening, sharing a slice of pie, or exchanging a brief smile, yet its value is immense. Moreover, the message about personal boundaries was firmly reinforced. Amelia asserted her right to respect, and the family learned that love does not grant license to control or manipulate. Each person was free to express their views without fear of being labeled dangerous or unstable. The dining table transformed into a safe environment where every member could speak and be heard. Additionally, clear results emerged in personal growth. Amelia affirmed her self-worth with confidence and courage, refusing to let the fear of isolation silence her inner voice. Meanwhile, her family members learned a lesson in accountability. Every decision, big or small, carries consequences. They realized that the only way to preserve family love is through honesty, not through hollow facades of pride. By the end, the Bennett dining table was no longer just a place to share meals, but a symbol of transformative power. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one of mutual empathy, appreciation, and shared growth. As the final candle flickered out, they did not feel loss, but a warm glow of hope in their hearts. Ultimately, the most profound message conveyed by this dinner is that family is not a one-sided gift of unconditional love, but a joint journey of hearts willing to share responsibilities, face challenges together, and cultivate trust. When each member learns to step into another's shoes, respect boundaries, and bravely stand up for their own value, any dining table can become a place that lights up love and sparks enduring happiness.